Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. We're a Minnesota sports podcast, and today we're going to be discussing Minnesota Vikings as we have breaking news as of a couple hours ago as we're recording this here. Jim Harbaugh, all the excitement of him coming to town and interviewing with the Vikings and pretty much everyone thinking this was going to be a slam dunk hire. Turns out he's actually going to go back to Michigan, and he told them he'll stick around for as long as they want him to. And the Vikings are now zeroing in on Kevin O'Connell, according to Tom Pelissero, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, all the big names, and also confirmed by Vikings reporters as well that apparently the Harbaugh interview, they didn't see eye to eye on something, obviously, that to let Harbaugh leave the building like that. But at least it's encouraging that they're turning their direction to Kevin O'Connell, who you and I have both talked about, seems to be a very strong candidate. He fits the prototype of what you and I were looking for in terms of a younger offensive mind, kind of the direction the league has been trending as of late. Granted, he doesn't have the experience calling plays, but I guess what are your overall thoughts on just how this whole situation played out? Because you and I were thinking yesterday we'd have to do a Harbaugh video here tonight. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, what a whirlwind of events, really. I mean, when I woke up this morning, I was like, yeah, Harbaugh, that's the guy. I'm pretty confident in that. Obviously there could be a hiccup in there somewhere that could throw things off track, but I didn't think that would actually come true. You just kind of had it in the back of your mind. And now all of a sudden, here we are. We're targeting Kevin O'Connell, and feels like so much has changed just within the last, probably 12 hours or something like that. So that's kind of crazy, but I'm pretty excited about this move. Like you said, we've been positive on this idea since the beginning, since he was identified as one of the candidates for this head coaching position. So I'm pretty excited with the direction we're going in here. I think like you said, he's got the background we were looking for, being the up-and-coming young offensive mind. So I think that's great. And then I'm really glad we're buying into something in the Rams system, their organization. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of good things happening there. They're always in it. I mean, here they are. They're in their second Super Bowl with McVay since 2018. So that certainly says something. And then all of his assistants have turned into pretty solid head coaches around the league, and including in our own division with LaFleur once upon a time. So yep. I'm pretty stoked about this. Obviously, like you said, he doesn't come with the background in play calling, but at the same time, it's like neither did Zach Taylor really, and he was one of McVay's coaches once upon a time, and now he's coaching against them in the Super Bowl. So right. I think there's a lot to like here, and I think this is a guy the fans can get really excited about.
Absolutely. So back to Harbaugh here for just a sec, because obviously he's the big name in all of this. But Courtney Cronin's got a tweet thread here about the Harbaugh Vikings situation. Mm-hmm. She said he was basically in the mix because of his connection to Kwesi. He operated under the assumption that the job was his and prepared for the interview as such, whereas the Vikings interviewed or thought of it more as just like a straight up interview. They weren't, coming away from it expecting to offer him the job. Mm. So I think it was just kind of a difference in what they thought the meeting was going to be, really. And so it doesn't sound like there's bad blood on either side either, but basically Harbaugh came in expecting they were just going to hand him the job, and I don't think that was the plan. I think from what other people had been reporting earlier in the day, Kwesi was in on him, but it was going to take some convincing of ownership to be bought in on Harbaugh, considering how he left San Francisco. Would he have enough patience to potentially want to, go through a 1 or 2 year rebuild here? So I think, some of the stuff that had concerned us when the Harbaugh rumors first started flying kind of came into play here, at least a little bit. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lurking factor out there with how he exited San Francisco that certainly worries people, and I think rightfully so. It seemed a little suspicious, and obviously we don't really know the whole backstory there, and we know that Kwesi was a big fan, so it couldn't have been too drastically bad on Harbaugh's side, at least for his exit back in San Fran back in 2014 or 15, whatever that was. Mm-hmm. So obviously wasn't quite so bad, but certainly gave ownership enough pause to be like, yeah, we really got to evaluate this guy, and it really takes some serious convincing. And really, I think all the candidates might have been playing from behind since the beginning of the week, because Kevin O'Connell was the first one to get the second interview. So he might have set the bar so high that it was pretty impossible almost to reach for everybody else that came in and talked to the Vikings about this job. So I think, like you said, these two sides came into today with completely different outlooks and perspectives as far as what they thought this was. So I think that probably played into it. And then I'm glad that they took their time because obviously they really took the whole day. They interviewed him, started around 8 this morning, and then went all the way through to like 5, 6 o'clock, whenever that was. So obviously they did their due diligence, but it just wasn't there. And I think that's fine. I think they're getting their guy that seems like everybody can agree on. But I can't help my curiosity and thinking about what really was the difference between Harbaugh not getting this job and getting this job. Like what really was the basically the line that the ownership group wasn't willing to cross.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question because it just, based on what everyone had been reporting, it seemed like he was the favorite, but maybe that's just a lot of smoke coming from the Harbaugh camp,
Maybe.
considering that he was expecting to get this job. So it's definitely interesting. It sounded like he really wanted a crack back at the NFL, but now it's like he interviewed once and now he's going to go back to Michigan and tell them that he'll stay as long as they want him to, basically. Like,
Yeah,
I find that kind of strange, but he's a strange dude. We've talked about
he's
that too.
it's bizarre.
But let's shift back to Kevin O'Connell because obviously
Yeah,
he's going to be our head coach. At least that's the reports. Nothing could be officially announced until after the Super Bowl, which is still a week and a half out. So I guess we'll have a little downtime again before we get the true announcement, and then the excitement can really kick in. But I mean, I'm so happy because this is what you and I were calling for pretty much midway through the Vikings season. Honestly, like you could tell the writing was on the wall with Zim. You could tell players weren't exactly happy with him. You could tell that there was some dissension there between him and the front office. Like you could just tell stuff was not going in the right direction. So um, it was kind of shocking to us that Spielman got fired, but all of a sudden here we are. We have a 40-year-old general manager. We're gonna have a 37-year-old head coach, just going in a completely different direction than where we have been, and it could completely blow up in our face because both these guys are extremely unproven. They're both getting their first crack at their respective titles, but at least it provides some excitement, some potential, and at least some hope that the Vikings are going to become a more exciting team, a more explosive offense, preferably. And the way they attack this draft, I think, is going to be super interesting as well. So, what are kind of your thoughts on where the organization stands right now?
yeah. Like you said, completely different direction. I think that's what everybody really wanted from the outset of this. After Rick and Mike were both fired, I think everybody just wanted to go in a different direction that hopefully would take us to new heights, really, because it felt like we were getting stale. We were hitting a ceiling that we couldn't really get past as far as being just this mediocre average team that would fluctuate between like 7, 8 to 10 wins or something in a season. So
Right.
obviously that's not what we want. We don't want to just scratch in the playoffs, maybe steal a game and then be done. We want to actually be a serious championship contender and make a run in the playoffs. So I think this feels like the recipe for success these days. And having that young head coach that really is new style guy, a forward thinker, along with the GM, who the Vikings are kind of taking a chance here just because he's unlike most of the GMs out there. So I think this is going to be a fascinating thing to watch unfold just because there's a lot of newness here that you have no idea where it's going to go because obviously the experience factor is different with these guys than our previous two because obviously Zimmer had all the experience in the world in the NFL. He coached in the league for like 20 some years. And then Rick had been a scout since 1991 or something where
Right.
like Kwesi and O'Connell, like they've been in the league not even a decade. So I think that's going to be obviously there's going to be a learning curve there to just being this high up in an organization. But I think they're worth taking a chance on. I think they both present their strengths that we want to see just because it's the new age. And I think there's a new brand of football being played. And I think these guys are going to cater to that pretty well.
Absolutely. So I saw a tweet here. Chris Thomas had just tweeted this actually. He
Okay.
just got a text from Jim Harbaugh, and he said, "quote The Will family and organization are first class all the way in every way, and Kwesi is a shining star. The team is poised for greatness." So I mean, obviously it's just Harbaugh being classy and probably thanking them for the opportunity. But I mean, for
What
him
does
to
that
say
mean?
for him to say that Kwesi's a shining star, at least I find is at least a little encouraging.
That's a huge vote of confidence for sure.
So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. But of course, we're gonna have to turn the attention here to Kirk Cousins because he's the obvious elephant in the room at this point. We thought maybe if Jim Harbaugh's hired, there'd be a good chance he sticks around, just because obviously, like we talked about, Harbaugh probably wouldn't want to sit through a rebuild and have to potentially start over at the quarterback position. So I'd say odds are pretty good now that Kirk Cousins is going to get moved in some form or fashion. He for sure will not be extended, I would imagine. So what are your thoughts on where he stands now that we're going to have a young offensive-minded coach in here who has, I think he was Kirk's quarterback coach for 1 year in 2017 with Washington. But do you think that connection means anything in this scenario?
It's hard to say. From our perspective, we obviously want him traded tomorrow, and especially for any draft picks we can get, really. But I could also see them maybe riding it out for a year. I don't know, because obviously, for what it's worth, he does. O'Connell has that familiarity with Kirk, and that 1 year they spent together with him as the quarterbacks coach. So obviously he probably knows him fairly well, albeit it's a few years ago now, but still, I mean, that's a whole season. So you get to know a guy pretty well through that. But I don't know how much he loves Kirk or not. I'm not sure if that could have been part of the negotiations too, and finding our head coach, find a guy that's gonna be like, yeah, Kirk ain't it. We want to move on, and I can firmly say I'll develop a quarterback that we draft in the first round or something along those lines. So
right.
I think you're right that with a younger coach that feels like he's not trying to win a championship like right now in 2022, then there's a higher likelihood that we move on and he gets his own guy, which is exactly what I want, because I don't want to ride out this Kirk Cousins experiment anymore. And I'm hoping they feel the same way. Obviously, I think it's still possible he's still going to be here for another year, but at the same time, I don't think with this young GM and young coach who probably are giving some assurances that they should be around, barring absolute disaster, they should be around at least 3 years. I don't think they're going to tie an extension of Kirk Cousins to those 3 years. And like, if that doesn't work out, then they're gone. So I think he should be on the way out, but I still think there's still a decent chance that he's still here too.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. I'm excited about this news, because just going in a new direction obviously is huge. And obviously this week is Senior Bowl week, and from what I've seen, at least from people that are down there reporting, Malik Willis has had just a fantastic couple days down there already. He's easily been the most impressive quarterback, and that includes Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Carson Strong, all guys that are in the conversation of being, some of the top quarterbacks in this draft. So obviously Matt Corral's not down there because he's not a senior and he was injured at the end of the season. So it makes it intriguing if a guy like Malik Willis, if his draft stock can rise a little bit here, because you're still picking 12. You have the potential to move up. And are 3 of these quarterbacks really going to go in the top 12? I mean, it's certainly possible. But because if a guy like Malik Willis really impresses enough, it would not surprise me even to see like Detroit at number 2 snag a quarterback, just because, they'd be passing up on an elite edge rusher. But I mean, think about it. If they had a shot at like a Malik Willis and they identified him as the guy, I mean, just stuff like that. So basically what I'm saying is the chips will be on the table. We'll have an opportunity to move up to get a guy if we really need to. And it'll just be interesting to see how this organization now handles the quarterback position, and also what they do with some of these veterans that we have that could potentially get moved as well to save some salary cap space.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Malik Willis too. Yeah, I just had to take a second there. Pairing him with Dan Campbell seems like wow.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like you said, that nothing's off the table in the draft. You just never really know for sure. Obviously, as we get closer, there'll be a lot more clarity. But like right now, especially, you could throw anything at the wall and say this is what's going to happen. I could see a really valid case for it. So I think right now it's hard to say how many quarterbacks will or won't go above our pick, and if we'll have to make a move up the board or not. But like you said, I think that'd be great if we could identify one of these guys that's at Senior Bowl, or a guy like Corral or something, and be like, yes, this is our guy. We're going to draft him at any means necessary. We'll trade up if we need to, or we'll just get lucky and take him at our own spot. But I'm pretty excited about the prospect of that idea. The only thing that kind of makes me hold back a little bit, I assume the Vikings have plenty of scouts down there and everything, but it kind of sucks that in a way O'Connell is in Super Bowl preparation mode. He's not officially the head coach until after that ends, so like he's gonna miss this whole Senior Bowl process, and it'd be nice to have like him. And then obviously got Kwesi worrying about this head coach search up until now, so obviously he hasn't been there either. But it'd be nice to have boots on the ground from our really highest leaders in the organization, getting a look at these quarterbacks and being like, yeah, that's our guy of the future. So that that's kind of too bad. But at the same time, I mean, that's what pro days are for too. Hopefully, everybody
Yeah.
does the same things at the pro days, and we hear about like how many different pro days O'Connell goes to or something like that'll obviously stir it up a little bit. But
Yeah.
and I know the Senior Bowls and everything, but it just be yeah, it kind of sucks. It feels like we're at a disadvantage slightly there, but at the same time, a lot of the teams looking for quarterbacks in this draft are probably in the same spot we are, where they're either in the coaching search or just recently wrapped it up or something like that. So,
Right.
I mean, we're not that far behind, but still, that would be kind of nice. But obviously, that's a pretty minor inconvenience, literally just in the short term. Obviously, just a one time thing, so it's all right. But looking forward to when I hear that O'Connell or Quessy or something's at like a Pitt Pro Day for Kenny Pickett or something. Like,
Right.
obviously, then everybody will go crazy on Twitter, and that'll be fun. I'll just eat it all up.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of funny because I saw a tweet that got mentioned again tonight about how Jacksonville had wanted to interview Kevin O'Connell, but they missed out on the window to interview him the first time.
Yep.
So now that it's come out that the Vikings are targeting him to be their head coach, and he's probably going to be their head coach, people are like, well, now Jacksonville is just fools for even releasing that information in the first place that they're interested in him, because now they won't even be able to interview him at all. And they've completely bungled the whole Byron Leftwich situation. Like, who knows what's going to happen with that? So, I mean, thank God we're not a team like that that's just completely dysfunctional from the top down. At least we have solid ownership. It appears we've hired a solid general manager, and obviously it remains to be seen with the coach. But before we go here, we kind of talked about, some possibilities with who maybe Jim Harbaugh would bring in as coordinators. But who do you think O'Connell would target here? I know there's rumors that maybe this Patrick Graham, who we brought in for like 9 hours yesterday for that interview, defensive coordinator from the Giants. He's got interest from the Steelers coming back to the Giants, and as well potentially from the Vikings. And he could definitely serve as like an assistant head coach role. Apparently, he's very analytical, thinking on the defensive side of the ball. So what would be your thoughts about bringing him in potentially if he had interest, and who you'd maybe target for an offensive coordinator?
I'm all for it with bringing in Patrick Graham to be the DC. I think he probably would bring a lot of good ideas and hopefully a more player-friendly approach as opposed to what we just had. But it also says a lot for me if Mike Tomlin's out there being like, yeah, I want this guy as my DC, because I think that's an ultimate stamp of approval, because Tomlin's one of the best in the business. So I think that says a lot, and that makes me want him more. And then the Giants defense did get better. I know a lot of people scoff because like the Giants, it was just a mess these last couple of years with Joe Judge just all over the place, all these bad headlines. But at the same time, like if you look deep into their numbers as a defense and from year to year, as far as that goes, the Giants defense did pretty well, albeit in all things considering their offense and certainly was shaky at best at times. So I think I'm very open to that idea. As far as the offense coordinator goes, I have no idea. And truthfully, if O'Connell's going to call the plays, how much does it really matter? Like, I think it's more of just a placeholder, because it's like when Zim was here. How much did our DCs really play a part in what happened on game days for our defense? Like nothing.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
Obviously, the plan during the week, which I don't know how much that really is important to that side of the ball or not. But I could see us bringing in, if you're gonna look for names to target out there, I'd probably say whoever the Rams quarterbacks coach is or something right now. I guess I don't know who that is off the top of my head. I got to look into this because I guess I'm still soaking in all this O'Connell news. But I'd imagine some Rams assistant coaches probably got to be in the mix, just because like he's already in all those meeting rooms with these guys every day for this past year on a Super Bowl team. So logically, that probably makes sense to make one of those guys the offensive coordinator just to come with him. But obviously, it'll probably be. I would imagine it'd be somebody young, but at the same time, I guess I don't know for sure. It would just be somebody who probably hasn't been a coordinator before. I don't think he'd bring in some seasoned guy to be your offensive coordinator. Like on that one hand, and probably help you call plays for the first time. Or he might have. I can't remember if it was him or Gruden that called the plays in Washington a couple of years ago. That's the thing.
I think I saw he did call plays for like half a season or something.
Okay, that's what it was. So. You never know. But I'd imagine he'd bring in a guy that's just kind of making his way through the ranks, such as like the way he was in LA. So I think the jury's definitely out on those. But I'd certainly like Patrick Graham as a DC.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm with you. I really don't know who offensive coordinator candidates could be. It'll be interesting to see what names potentially leak out here who he'd be interested in bringing in. Defensive coordinators, like you said, probably a little more important since he's not really acquainted with that side of the ball. But really, I'm just hoping he takes more of a holistic approach, really embraces the entire team, both sides of the ball, because that's what this team really needs. Because you don't want to create an offense versus defense division in the locker room. You want to bring everyone together, fight for each other. And I mean, if he's, people are saying he was super impressive in both his interviews. Well, maybe that's the leadership part of it coming through. So
True.
Obviously that's super important, but we'll know more obviously too once he's formally introduced and has his press conference, and
I can't wait for that.
We get a little taste of what he's all about. So that'll be fun to follow. But that's going to be a wrap for this episode of the North Star Takes podcast. If you're a Minnesota sports fan, Minnesota Vikings fan especially, give this video a like and hit the subscribe button on this channel. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and leave your comments below. What are your thoughts on this crazy day? Are you bummed that we missed out on Jim Harbaugh? Are you pumped about Kevin O'Connell? And just your thoughts on the future of the team going forward. So until next time, thanks for watching.